right, welcome back to Orthodoxy Podcast. And today, day three, we are talking about Christmas. We are glad, so Merry Christmas in advance to you out there. All right. And whether you do believe in Christmas or not, the purpose of this podcast is to kind of give a background information, essence, significance, and explanation, and to help you understand what you practice. If you do not, is to give you a reason to consider and what to actually look out for when you celebrate Christmas. All right. So, people ask, so if Christmas is about Christ, what's the meaning of Christmas tree doing in the whole thing? What is Santa Claus doing in the whole thing? And we'll talk about all of that. Okay. So gradually, the idea, as we talked about Christmas, has always been to present I would say, the celebration of the Incarnation of God, how God became man for the purpose of redeeming man from his sins. That was the practice over the centuries. But around the 16th century, when Christianity got into the German territories, and Christianity actually always has an impact on the existing culture of the people. So the German traditions actually had this celebration too. They observed around Christmas with trees. And so they found a common ground or an intersection between the Christmas celebration and what they practice. So they incorporated the Christmas trees. All right. And then when most of these German immigrants moved over to the United States in the early days of the migration to the Newfoundland, they carried some of these ideas along with them. It was their culture, their way of life. All right. So, but then the most interesting is Father Christmas. Okay. So there was this guy who was called St. Nicholas. So St. Nicholas of Myra. Myra is modern day Turkey in the 4th century. So he was actually called St. Nicholas by the Roman Catholic Church. But Nicholas was a bishop who was known to be generous. He used to give out alms. He had an extraordinary generosity. In fact, a day was set out, December 6th, to celebrate him. All right. So when this same tradition when Christmas celebrations got into the Dutch lands, into Netherlands and the Dutch territories, and of course, the people who talked to them about Christmas passed on some oral traditions to them, and then passed on this celebration of St. Nicholas. So they found also a common ground between what they called Santa Claus. Santa Claus. I don't know if I get the pronunciation right. So, and this was also a Dutch folklore character who gave gifts. So they found a common ground. They said, like just we do in most of our practices, our indigenous practices, you find a common ground. You find names that you used to call gods traditionally, and then when you accept Christ, you begin to call God those names. So they, adopted Santa Claus as St. Nicholas of the people who introduced Christianity to them. So, and all right, when the gospel also got into Britain, they had also, they had this same practice, but they had a Father Christmas practice originally, even before the gospel got into them. And Father Christmas practice for them was about merriment, giving gifts, feasting, had nothing to do with Christ or religion or any of those things. And they also found a cultural integration between St. Nicholas and their Father Christmas. So they adopted the name Father Christmas. But these were just culturally contextual practices. It wasn't generally, what the Dutch practiced as Christmas was different from what the German practice. Their peculiar practices, the trees, the Father Christmas and all of that wasn't a worldwide celebration. Generally the church across the West, as the Western churches practiced what the feast that we'll look into. The Eastern Orthodox churches also practiced the feast too. But then, in 1909, when America had been found and built, so some writers, actually some poets and some creative cartoonists and people who shape culture of the society, and this is a powerful lesson to you out there. If you're a writer, you're a creator, you're a creative, you are someone who you're a top leader. You should take what you do seriously, especially if you're a Christian. So these guys began to write about this guy called Washington Ivan, began to write about the pipe smoking, St. Nicholas flying over rooftops, the exact picture of what we celebrate today as Santa Claus. He began to merge a picture of the St. Nicholas with the Santa Claus, with Father Christmas, and then shifted the focus of Nicholas from actually a bishop to a folklore winter figure. All right. So, and that wasn't the celebration from when it all started. So he changed it to a folklore winter figure that flies over your roof, smokes pipe, and, drops gifts over your rooftop. Then other 17th century writers, 18th century writers began to enforce and reinforce these narratives. And then by the 20th century, advertising companies like Coca-Cola, drink companies, and pop culture actually spread the American Santa Claus globally. So it was by the 20th century that what we practice today about Santa Claus and, the red things was spread by pop culture. Such a powerful, cultural shift. This was a practice that started out to glorify, to make people look up to the Christ, his first coming and his second coming, because we'll talk about this in the Advent. But, there was a cultural shift and things became how it is today. So the bottom line is the goal of Christmas is about the Christ, is about the Savior, is about his work in salvation and what he has done for us. All right. So I will see you tomorrow where we'll talk about the meaning of Christmas and we will look at a few catechism, all right, about Christmas, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.